Thank you so much, Damien. And thanks everybody for coming to the session today to find out what you need to know about scholarships. Thanks to Damien and everyone at My Blueprint for inviting me here today. So I always like to start my sessions with good news. And so here is some good news for everybody here today. Grade 12 is your best opportunity for a scholarship. There will never be another time in your life when there are more opportunities for them and less competition. So when you get into university, or when students get into university, there are still opportunities for scholarships. So by no means am I saying stop looking and don't apply or anything like that, but there are fewer of them. They tend to be a little bit more related to academics versus, community involvement and that sort of thing. And the dollar figures are not as high as the ones for students who are in grade 12 and are entering university for the first time. So there's really kind of this, golden window of opportunity that students have. And once that opportunity is gone, you've missed it. So still be looking for those things for scholarships when you're in university, but this is really the time that it is your best opportunity. So this is me. I'm Janet MacDonald. I was an assistant registrar of admissions at Dalhousie University, and I was an admissions officer at UBC in Vancouver. I've worked in higher education for about 15 years, and so I have a lot of experience, kind of with the whole process from admissions into academic advising and kind of the whole process that students go through. I was also a program coordinator for a national scholarship program at Dalhousie. And, over this time of working in higher education, I spoke with and worked with thousands of students, and parents. And what I discovered is that many of them didn't know much at all about scholarships. And so this was a problem that I saw for students, and I knew that they were missing out on these opportunities. I knew something about scholarships. They needed to know something about scholarships. So you put that together, and that's how I came up with my business, which is called mycampusGPS. And, really simply, what I do is I help high school students and their parents with how to find and apply for scholarships. So this is what we're going to cover in the session today. We're going to start with just, what are these terms that we hear? Scholarships, bursaries, awards. What's the difference between those? So everybody's on the same page. And then we'll talk about the different kinds of scholarships that are out there. And then I'm going to go over 5 things that I think that you need to know about scholarships. Now, there are more than 5 things, but that's all that we have to cover, time we have to cover here today. And then I'm going to answer your questions at the end. I'll be really happy to do that. So put those questions in the chat or the Q&A, and I'm really happy to answer those. Throughout the presentation, you might see this little guy pop up, and that is my reminder to remind you of what you should be doing or what students should be doing in grade 11 and grade 12. Now, Damien, I wonder if you could launch the poll to find out who we have in the audience today. I think there's probably a mix, but I just would like to kind of know who's.
Yeah, let's do it. That's great timing. I'm just sharing some of the results. I can do it verbally for who's in intensity. It looks like the large majority, a little over 60% coming from Ontario and Quebec, prairies, some people from BC and Alberta here as well. But yes, let's launch the second poll. So who are we talking to today? Are we educator? Are we student? Are we parent? Who's in the audience?
Look at all those students, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
And some counselors.
Shout out to the parent in the room.
Yeah.
One parent, one teacher, a bunch of counselors, and a bunch of students. Okay, that's super helpful. Yeah.
Good. Okay, so there's going to be something in here for everybody today. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the terminology. What is a scholarship? Very simply, a scholarship is just education funding that's offered by an organization. Okay, the main thing that you have to remember about scholarships is that they are based on merit, which means the student has to earn them in some way. They have to do something to earn it. So that might be through grades, although grades are not required for all scholarships. It might be through volunteerism or some kind of community involvement, or writing an essay or something. But there has to be something, some work that the student does to earn the scholarship. The other word that we hear a lot is bursary. A bursary is also education funding that's offered by an organization. So with scholarships and bursaries, that might be a university or college, or it might be some other kind of organization, like a community organization. Okay, so bursaries are based on either exclusively on demonstrated financial need or mostly on demonstrated financial need. It's unusual, although it's possible, for a bursary to be based on merit. Okay, so that's the main difference between a bursary and a scholarship. So some scholarships might have demonstrated financial need as a component of the scholarship, but it's not usually the only thing that it is based on, whereas with a bursary, that's usually the case. Okay. And the third word that we hear is award. So, that might be at a university, the awards office. So when I'm talking about an award, I use the word award and scholarship, interchangeably. So by that, I mean, it's based on merit and it has money attached to it. Sometimes, you hear about an award and it might not have money attached to it, but in this case, in this presentation anyway, I always talk about award as being the same as a scholarship. The other difference between a bursary and a scholarship, bursaries tend to be in the low hundreds the hundreds of dollars or the low thousands of dollars. And scholarships tend to be in the thousands of dollars up to the largest ones in Canada, which are $100,000. Okay, so bursaries are really meant more to augment the funding that the student already has in place, whereas scholarships are those bigger pots of money. Okay, so what they all have in common is that they are free money. And free money you do not have to pay back, which is the best kind of money. Okay, so that's just so everybody knows what we're talking about here today. So what I work with are scholarships. So we're talking about merit-based awards. Okay, so let's look at the different kinds of scholarships. So the first and really foundational thing that you have to understand about scholarships is that they are all different. All of them are different. Unfortunately, they're not any that are really the same. Not that I know of anyway. So they are all different because they are offered by different funders. And it is the funder who determines everything about the scholarship. They determine how much it is, the requirements on the scholarship, whether or not there's demonstrated financial need, if there's an essay, what the essay is about, like everything. And all of the funders are different, so all of the scholarships are different. So many of the answers that you will hear, if you on some of the questions that you might ask, will be, it depends. And oftentimes it depends on the funder, okay, what they require and what their terms are. Okay, but let's look at the two kind of different buckets, I guess you would say, of funding and scholarships. The first kind are the ones that are offered by the university or the college. So I work with students who are entering university. However, it's really post-secondary because just like universities, many colleges have their own scholarships that they offer to students. So a lot of this information, almost all of it really, applies to students who are applying to college as well as university. Okay, and so let's look at the different kinds that can be offered by a university. The first kind is the most common kind, I guess you would say. And, universities call these different things, but they're kind of like, some of them will call it the automatic awards. And basically what these are scholarships that are based exclusively on your grades. So when you apply to the institution, they do some kind of, calculation of your grades. They all do that differently. So there's no one way, that they all do it. And based on what that figure is that they come up with, they will have different kind of levels of scholarships for students. So say if you have a 90 to 92, then it's $2,000. And if you have a 92, whatever, and it goes up. So there are these different kind of levels that are based on your grades, but these are based exclusively on your grades when you submit the appropriate transcript, okay? Then there is kind of like another tier, I guess you would say, that's possible for some universities to offer. And these are scholarships that are based on a general application form. So by that I mean, it's an application that any student can complete. And it probably would have something like your activities list, so your extracurricular activities, and a short essay of some kind. Let's just say, like they're all different, but it would be something like that. Any student can complete it, and based on that information that they gather through that application, there's kind of like another pot of money that you could win. Then there are scholarships that are based on that have a specific application form. So the student would apply based on requirements for that specific award and that one application form. So an example of this might be like the Chancellor's Award, something like President's Award or something like that, or the Janet MacDonald Award, if I gave a big pot of money to the university. So with these ones, the student must, apply using that one specific application. Now, not all universities are going to offer all three different kinds. Some will and some won't. So it's up to you to really look at the websites and find out what different kinds the university offers. University awarded scholarships are what they're really looking for kind of generally are grades and usually some kind of like leadership type experience, okay? Now, the ones that are all the other ones that are not offered by the university, they're collectively called, or we collectively call them external awards, meaning they're external from the university. And these vary greatly. There is a huge variety of these kinds of awards. So I'm just going to give you an idea of kind of like the spectrum of them. So on one side of the spectrum, we have kind of these highly competitive, large awards, like, for example, the Loran, which some of you might have heard of. It's one of the biggest ones in Canada. It's valued at $100,000. And it is highly competitive, and they're looking for a certain profile of student for that particular award. Then on the other side of the spectrum, way down the spectrum, is my favorite scholarship. And it is one that is offered by a hot tub cover manufacturer.
Amazing.
And with this one, all you have to do is write an essay about how hot tubs make our lives better. No grades, no activities, no references. You just, how the hot tub. Now it's ridiculous, but that is one that any student would qualify for, right? So, I'm using these two as an example of the variety that's out there. So this is the spectrum. Now, most of them are somewhere in between there, okay? But it used to be that scholarships were only for top students. That was true back in the day, but that is not true anymore. There's really something out there for someone if you put in the work to do it, whatever it is, okay? So, the hot tub one, anyone can do that, but you do have to write the essay for that one. Okay, so a lot of variety out there, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more, through the presentation about some different ones. Okay, so let's move on to the things that you need to know about scholarships. And the first thing, of course, is like when are they offered? Like, when should I be doing this stuff? So scholarships start to be offered in September of grade 12. Now, many people are surprised by that. There's a lot going on at the beginning of grade 12, but there are a lot of scholarships that actually start to be offered in September of grade 12. Now, they're offered throughout the entire year of grade 12. So there's no one time where they all open and no one deadline when they all close. They are opening and closing throughout the entire grade 12 year. So some will be open, for example, now where you can apply for them, and then the deadlines will come in whenever, they set the deadline, and then they're gone, and then you can't apply for them anymore. Okay, your opportunity has passed. The window has closed. So, but then there may be others, throughout the year. Now, the majority are probably between December and May in grade 12, but again, there's some before and there's some after that as well. So let's look at this year. Let's look what's happening kind of right now. Okay, so these are just some of the scholarships that were open between September and November. Now, some of these may have closed by now, but these are just some of them. These are like the national ones where any student in the country could apply for them. There are other ones too that are out there that are live right now. Okay, and if you see these ones, two of the biggest ones in Canada are very early in grade 12. So if you are not on the ball, you're going to miss these opportunities, okay? So it's very important that you know that the time is now if you're in grade 12. Also, you need to know that some universities have scholarship deadlines before the admission deadline. So for example, I'm just using this as an example, the deadline to apply to, let's say, Queen's University is about mid-January, but their major admissions awards deadline is December 1st. Okay, so that they can be different. So you just need to know that you should be doing this now. Also, some scholarships require a school nomination, and then that nomination takes time to do as well. So you really, again, the time is of the essence here. So if you're in grade 12, you should be doing this now is the point here. And if you're in grade 11, let's think about this. Those early applications, for example, the Loran, it opened in September and it's closed now. You can't apply for that anymore. The deadline has passed. It's early in grade 12, and there are some other ones that are similar to that as well. If you're applying for those really early ones, like I say, in some of the biggest ones in Canada, what information are you using on your applications? Stuff from grade 11, right? So grade 11 grades and grade 11 activities, because grade 12 hasn't happened yet. So again, students can be really kind of surprised by that. So this is why I say it's really important, for students in grade 11. It's an important year. You do have to be aware of that. Your marks and your activities can impact scholarships in grade 12. Okay, so the second thing is where to find scholarships. Okay, we know when they are, where are they is the next thing. So I created a guide called How to Find and Win Scholarships. So I don't find scholarships for students. I help them to find them for themselves. So I give them the places, the tips and the strategies. So this is a guide for high school students who are applying to post-secondary in Canada. You can get that on my website, but hey, you can win this here today, right, Damien? Yeah. So don't buy it because you might win it. Okay, so do you want to talk about that now, Damien? Or?
Yeah, we are going to give away. Janet was nice enough to donate a few copies of this, so it's going to be a random draw. When we send out the recording, we'll announce the random winners as well. There's only going to be 5 of them though, so don't let it stop you from picking it up as well. I love what you just talked about, where you don't find them for the students, you'll teach them how to find. It's kind of that you catch a fish for a person, they'll eat for a day, but you teach them how to fish, they'll eat for life, right? So right. It's a fantastic guide, and I hope a few students pick that up.
Yeah, and once you learn that once, then it carries throughout university as well. Okay, so you learn it once, and then you can use it from here on in. Okay, So let's talk about where to find scholarships. The first place that I suggest students start are with scholarship search engines. Now, there are a few of them out there. The biggest one in Canada is scholarshipscanada.com. It's a great place to start, okay? So the way that you can use this search engine is, you can just kind of search or whatever, but the best way to really use this is to create a profile where it will ask you a bunch of information. You put in your information and the search engine will do its magic, and it will start to match you with scholarships that fit your profile. Now, this is not perfect, and it's not going to always give you like your dream scholarships or whatever. Some of them you might not be interested in applying for, or you might not meet the requirements exactly, but it's a great place to start. Okay, so the other thing is that the student can make a profile here for themselves, or parents like to help sometimes, or maybe you have a supporter who can help you through this process. What that a parent or supporter can do is they can create the profile, or get your matches for you and kind of go through them and kind of curate them basically, and then forward the ones to you that are the best matches. Okay, so you're kind of filtering them basically for the person. So, if you're in grade 12, you should be making your profile now if you haven't already done so. This is for all free, okay? So if you're in grade 11, you can get on there now if you want and like make your profile. There's not a lot, honestly, for students before grade 12, but there are some, but just, get familiar with the platform basically, okay? Here are, like I said, there are other ones. So here are some other search engines out there. So, maybe you want to do all of them, maybe you just want to do some of them, but it's a good place to start. Okay. And then the second place that I suggest students start to look and start to, make a habit of looking is with their school counselor website or their school counselor Google Classroom. More counselors now are going with their Google Classrooms. So this is a great place as well for students to be looking regularly for those scholarships, because some scholarships will come directly to the office. Okay, so they do know some, they do have some that will come directly there. Let's say it's like a small community organization or something like that. It might even just be, they might not have it on their website. It might just even be a paper application that they get in the guidance office. And if any counselors would like to kind of share what their process is, in the chat or whatever, like, feel free to do that, or correct me if I'm wrong, I guess. But with students, I just suggest that they find out how does it work in your school? How are they announced? And it's really important that they check these things regularly, because they're offered throughout the year, they're going to be coming in throughout the year. And so that means that you have to make a point to check regularly, okay, with your counselor and on the Google Classroom or whatever it is that however it is that they announce their scholarships. Okay, so grade 12 should be doing that now. And some other places to look, of course, the university websites of the universities that you are thinking about applying to. Check early because of those early deadlines. There are program-specific scholarships. So there are ones that are specifically for students who are entering engineering or applying to engineering programs. There's one for journalism. I've had the organization has contacted me to ask me to advertise that one. That's a hint. That means there's not a lot of people applying for it. Okay, so there are these program specific ones. So you can, put it into Google, maybe it's Women Engineering Scholarship Canada, something like that. That's going to give you some results on that. Then there are all these other ones too. Employers, so student's employer, your parents, grandparents, any union affiliation you have, your parents have, insurance company, bank, foundations like a hospital foundation. So for example, here in Halifax, our children's hospital has two really nice awards, one for former patients and one for a research project. So, maybe your hospital foundation, especially if you're thinking about getting into the health professions, those are great ones to get that are attached kind of to a health, in some kind of health capacity. Sports organizations, so there's one for, curling, there's like a skip rope one, all kinds of things. Community organizations, so there's an international women's club called the Zonta Club. There are chapters in Canada. If there's a chapter in your area, find out. Again, not well known and don't have a lot of applications. So a good tip there. Get a list of your community organizations and work through it. If you want to be really professional, you can do it that way. Think about your affiliations. Okay, so the way that you're Googling or you're searching or you're looking for things, what are my affiliations? So, if it might be like your heritage. So there's one for students of Italian descent. There, it might be some kind of health condition that you have. So there's one for students with irritable bowel syndrome and things like that. So think of it in that way, and that will help you to look. Okay, so grade 12 should be doing that now. But it's not just where you look, it's how you look. Okay, so this is the strategy piece. So because they're offered every month of the year, you must look regularly year round. So I've had students who would say, well, Janet, I looked and I couldn't find anything. And I said, oh, really? Well, how many times did you look? Well, just once. It's like, well, if you just look once, you're only finding what's available at that moment, right? So it's kind of like looking for your dream home one day out of the year. You're only seeing what's available on the market that day. You're not seeing what came before it or what's coming up in the future. So I suggest that, as the student makes time to do this, and the parent as well. And I suggest you put it in your schedule or it won't get done, because if it's not in our schedule, it's not going to get done. Let's face it. So the other thing that I know is that students and parents too, we do this too, will say, well, I'll do this when I have free time. I'm gonna, when I get free time, I'm really going to be looking, I'm going to be doing this. Well, nobody has free time anymore. Like, it just doesn't exist, right? So if you're waiting for free time, it's not going to happen. Okay. The other thing is that there's no easy button with this. Okay, there's no app that's going to like do all the work for you. There's no like gaming the system or anything like that. There are ways to make it easier, and that's what I teach. That's how I help students, is to make it easier, but there's no easy button. Because scholarships are based on merit, you must do something to earn them, which means you got to do the work. Okay.
It's a great life lesson for all the students listening. Your return on investment from watching that movie on Netflix is going to be zero. Your return on investment from putting an hour in your calendar, once a week to do some creative Googling and check out some of the links that Janet shared, could put a serious paycheck towards your post-secondary education. So put in the time, put in the work, and put it in the calendar.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Damien. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the biggest tip, you need to make time to do this. Do not wait for free time. You need to make time. Okay, put it in your calendar and make the time to do it. So you have about 720 hours in a month. If you commit 3 to doing this per month, then you still have 717 hours to do all the other stuff that you normally do. Okay. So the third thing you need to know about scholarships is about the essay. Now, students get a little nervous about the essay. I do an entire workshop on scholarship essay writing. And if we go back to what I said at the beginning, that scholarships are all different, that's true. But if you've been doing this as long as I have, you know that even though they're all different, there are many of them have some similarities. Okay, so this is what I'm talking about now, are some similarities. So what is common? There are some common essay themes, okay, that come up again and again. Some are completely different. I'm just talking about the ones that are more common. Okay, so what are these common essay themes? The first one is around a challenge. So this question might go, discuss a time you faced a challenge. What was it? How did you handle it? What did you learn from that experience? Or it might be discuss a time you challenged yourself by stepping out of your comfort zone. What did you learn from that experience? Okay, so it's this thing around challenge and kind of your coping mechanisms, your attitude towards challenge and that sort of stuff. So the questions might be different, but the basic theme is around challenge. The second one is around leadership, and there's, that's no surprise. I'm going to talk about leadership in a minute in more depth because students get a little bit confused about what leadership means, but this question might go something like, discuss the time you were in a leadership role, what skills did you use in that role, and what did you learn from the experience? Okay. The third kind of essay theme is around volunteerism or community involvement. Again, no surprise here. Volunteer work is probably the thing that is most common as a requirement on a scholarship. So it's something that, if you don't have any volunteer experience, you're going to find it more difficult to find scholarships that fit your profile, although there are some that are still out there. Okay. So this one might sound something like, discuss your most important volunteer involvement. What was the main impact of it? What did you learn from it? Okay, something like that. And then the fourth kind is a little different. It's around your future plans. So it would be something like, discuss the program that you're applying for. How did you choose that? Or discuss the potential career that you'd like to go into. How did you choose that? Why do you think you'll be successful? So it's that kind of future plans theme. Okay. So here is a big tip. If you want to get really professional, what you can do is pre-write about 300 words, let's say, on one or more of these themes. And basically what you're doing is creating some master content that you can use on these scholarship applications. So, you just think about, tell us about a time you had a challenge. Tell us about your leadership. Tell us about, so that's how you can kind of frame the question in your head. And if you can write some really great content, then because these are common themes, what you can do is then use that same content, basically, use the same content over and over on scholarship applications throughout the entire year. So you're basically, you can, kind of basically copy and paste. You always want to tailor it to the new application and make sure that it fits and all of that. But most of the heavy lifting is already done because you've already have this master content created. Now, it has to be good content. So you can't be reusing garbage over and over again and expect to win. So, that's what I teach, is how to create that great content. And I will tell you, this is how people win scholarships, and this is how people win multiple scholarships, because you can apply for more scholarships in less time. Okay. So I had a student I worked with who had 2 part-time jobs. And, basically what she did is she cut back in her hours in her 1 part-time job, and she used that time to work with me to create this great content. And that's what she did. And then she just basically used that stuff over and over again throughout the entire year. And she was offered over $100,000 in different scholarships for that year. So, again, no easy button, but there are ways to make this easier and to increase your chances. Okay.
There's so many good pieces, so many nuggets of advice from what you just shared there, Janet. One, write things out ahead of time. People look at it, review it, iterate on it. It's a good practice for anything in life. But, you touched on something at the end there. If you treat this like a part-time job and you put in the time and you put in the effort and you're applying to multiple scholarships, you can get money. It's out there. You just got to put in the effort. There is no easy button.
Yeah. So it's not a guarantee, of course. There's never a guarantee with this stuff. But for example, that student traded she probably in her part-time job making minimum wage, maybe would have made, I don't know, $600.
Sure. Yeah.
And she ended up, like I say, with a lot more than that.
Everybody's circumstance is a little bit different, but I would trade 600 in guaranteed for a potential for something a lot bigger, right?
Yeah. So if you're in grade 12, you can be doing this now. If you're in grade 11, because these are common themes, you can then, prepare your activities. If you don't have any volunteer experience right now, maybe you should get some. If you can, take on a leadership position. That is going to give you a lot of bang for your buck. So let's talk about leadership for just a sec, because it's important. So in the broadest sense of the word, leadership is just any time you take responsibility for something, okay? And I'm using the information from the UBC personal statement instructions because it's fabulous. Their information is great. So leadership can come in many forms. So it's not just if you are student council president or the captain of your team or whatever. Leadership can come in a lot of different forms. Okay, so it can be different types of things. Any act of responsibility or initiative that serves others is a form of leadership. Okay, so here's the two things about leadership with scholarships. You're taking responsibility, you're separating yourself from the other people. So just being on a team is not leadership because you don't have any responsibilities that are different than anybody else. But the moment you step up to the plate and you do something like maybe you organize a fundraiser with your team, maybe you are doing skills drills, or that you've been tapped to kind of do something that's over and above, that's leadership. Okay, and the second part of that is that it serves others or it helps others in some way. Okay, so again, it doesn't have to have a title attached to it to be leadership. It can be something else. Okay, so if you're in grade 12, this is what you should be talking about on those leadership applications. But if you're in grade 11, this is a great time to think about getting some leadership experience so that when you're in grade 12, you have some great content to use for those leadership questions. And that is going to qualify you for a lot of different kinds of scholarships. Okay, so the fourth thing you need to know about scholarships is, what basically are they looking for on these essays? So again, I do the 2.5 hour workshop, so I can't get into all of that, but let's just talk about, basics of the essay. So, their scholarships are all different, but if we're talking about kind of like a full application, they may ask for your transcripts, a list of your extracurricular activities, there may be references, and then there's the essay. So they're going to have an idea of kind of the things that you're involved in, a little bit of idea, maybe if you have a reference from, about your character a bit there. But the purpose of the essay is to get to know you. Okay. It is not a grocery list of your accomplishments. Now, some of them are more kind of accomplish based, I guess you would say, like if you're applying to, Rotman or Ivy, like some of the business programs, it probably would be a little bit more kind of academic and success based and everything. But many of these are really more self-reflective type of essays. And the purpose of all of them is to get to know you as a person. Okay. So this kind of like, I did this and then I did that and then I did this and then I did that. That doesn't tell us who you are and why you did the things that you did and what you learned from the things that you were involved in. It just is like that grocery list of your activities, basically. So they're looking for students basically who have put some thought, into who they are, what experiences that they've had in the past, what's important to you now, what are your values, what are your motivations, and who do I want to be and how do I want to make a difference? What are the problems I want to solve and things like that. So these are the kinds of things you should be thinking about, okay, with your essay. Get personal. So you want to talk about your experiences, reflect on those, and then you want to demonstrate that self-knowledge. Okay, I know myself. I know these things. I've thought about what my experiences have, what I've learned from them. So yeah, so it's about your motivation for doing the things that you do, getting involved in that activity. Why did you get involved in that one? Why did you start that club at school? What was your motivation behind that? what did you learn from that thing that happened? What did you learn from the challenge that you've had in your life? And then how might you use that learning in the future? What was the impact of that on you and others, and kind of how will that now, how will you take that learning into the future, okay, at the university that you intend to apply to and in your life? Okay, so you hear this even in the questions, you'll hear a lot about what you did, what you learned from that experience. Okay.
Yeah, and Janet, I just want to speak to this from a recent experience. So this kind of stuff, guys, it can take practice, right? To Janet's point before, people who are giving out these scholarships just don't want to hear, I did this, I did that, I did this, I did that. We're hiring for a few different roles in my blueprint. And the very first question I'll ask everybody in the interview is, tell me about yourself. And the default answer is they basically read off the resume and give me a list of their work experience. But that's not what we're interested in. That's not what we want to learn from you as a human. So to Janet's earlier point as well, practice this stuff, write it out ahead of time, get some feedback on it, because it's not the most natural thing to talk about yourself. We're all pretty humble people. Right?
Mm-hmm, exactly. And that should probably, I hope, give some students a little bit of a relief, actually, because a lot of students I work with, I know, and I just know this about students too, is that they're reluctant to talk about their successes because they don't want it to sound like bragging. But these essays are not about bragging. What they are is just telling your story, talking about what you've done, and pulling out the learning from it and pulling out the good bits from it. Okay, so that is not bragging. Okay, just talking about what you learned. Okay, so yeah, grade 12 is doing that now. Okay. Now let's move on to the fifth thing, which are the hidden benefits of scholarships. So we hear a lot about the money, of course, and money is great, but money is not the only benefit to winning a scholarship or scholarships. But let's just talk about the money, okay? So you would have to work about 80 hours in a part-time minimum wage job to earn $1,000. Okay, so when you think of it that way, if you put 3 hours into working on a scholarship application, not guaranteed, but it could be the equivalent of putting in 80 hours of work in a minimum wage job. So that's a good return on investment. Okay, so the other types of benefits of scholarships besides the money, scholarships beget scholarships. And what I mean by that is that when you win one, it increases the likelihood of winning others in the future. Okay. For one thing, it increases your confidence, so you're more likely to apply. But it's a strong addition to those subsequent applications later on. Okay, so it's an entry onto your application that, a bit of success, or some kind of credential that you have that can then, like a stepping stone to the next one, or laddering, to the next opportunity. So that's why I say scholarships beget scholarships. Once you win one, it actually can help you to win more in the future. And the other thing is that it can open the door to other opportunities as well. So it just looks great on your record no matter what. Okay, so it can help, give you the edge for perhaps a co-op position. So some of those are pretty competitive, or an internship at Tesla. Like how are you going to get that? So it just looks great on your record. For summer jobs, if you and another candidate are, for the job, you have scholarship and the other candidate doesn't, it might make the difference. It's also a great thing to have on your record if you're thinking about maybe applying to any type of competitive program in the future, like medicine or grad school or whatever. Okay, so these types of benefits are actually sometimes worth more than the money that you actually win. Even a small scholarship can really make a big difference with this kind of like side effect, I guess you would say, from them. Okay, so those are the 5 things that I think that you need to know about scholarships. But now I want to kind of talk about something that can happen along the way to trip you up, I guess. Okay, so I want you to know that when you're working through this process of scholarships, that there will come a time, I can almost guarantee it, where you will have self-doubt. It will creep in at some point during the process, and it might come at you again and again, okay? So it's that nagging, those nagging thoughts that will come into your head that will hold you back from taking these opportunities. So, so here's the little voice in your head that's saying, I'm not a top student. Why am I even bothering with this? I'm not a leader. I'm not the type of person who wins awards. I've never won anything in my life. Or it's too competitive. I'll never win. So why am I even bothering? Okay, I'm not going to apply. So these are very natural thoughts. I will tell you that everyone who has been through this process, I mean, I can't say for sure, but I can say it's very, very normal, very natural. Even people who have won have thought these things, okay? So I want you to try to push past them, okay? It's natural, it's normal, try to push past it. So what I'm gonna do to help you is to take this one, which is very common. It's too competitive, I'll never win, so I'm not even going to bother to apply. And I'm going to kind of break it down a little bit and hopefully show you that it might not be as competitive as what you think. So the first thing is that if you're thinking it's too competitive, I'll never win, so I'm not going to apply, how many other people are thinking that way and they're not going to do it? They're not going to apply. So there's part of your competition that's gone right there. Okay, they're not even going to apply. Some awards are not advertised well and they have few applications. So that's this, millions of dollars in unused scholarships. I don't know if that's true, but I actually believe there's some truth to it for sure. So just when I was talking before about the journalism one where the person contacted me, can you help us to advertise this? I get that several times throughout the year. One of the funders who contacted me and asked me, excuse me, to help them to advertise their award, it was for $50,000. It was a week away from the deadline and they had hardly any applications for it. Okay, so some of these organizations that are offering scholarships, they're not, some of them are the big foundations. They have a big marketing budget and all of that sort of stuff, and you hear about them a lot. Some of them are just like an organization, like a community group or something that has a couple $1,000s to give away. They don't have a big marketing budget. They need to get the word out, but they don't have any expertise in doing that. So, there might not be they're not well advertised. Okay. So if you can find those ones and they exist, then they obviously are not very competitive. So here's another thing, many people intend to apply. So you'll hear them, oh yeah, absolutely, I'm going to do it and everything, but they don't follow through. So they have great intentions, but they don't follow through. So if you follow through, you're way ahead of the game right there. And here's one that you don't ever think about, is that some people apply, but they are disqualified. And this happens a lot more than you think. So when you make these applications, you have to follow the instructions exactly, okay? If you don't, you run the risk of being disqualified. And that's not because these people are mean or anything, it's because it's their job to ensure that people follow the rules. So I've been in the room with the committee, they're around the table and they're just going, yes, 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 no, yes, yes, no, no. And they're just, taking out the people immediately, not even reading their applications because they didn't follow the rules. And again, not because they're mean, but because it's their job to ensure that everyone who applies gets an equal opportunity, that it's fair. And so if somebody submits 3 references and they're only supposed to submit 2, they may be required to disqualify them. Now, what this means though, is that if you, excuse me, if you do follow the rules and you're not disqualified, you could actually win the award and you're not even the best candidate. Okay, so if the best candidates are disqualified, and it happens because they're rushing through these things too, then you may win and you're not even the best candidate. Okay, so that can work in your favor in a way. Okay, so I'd like you to those are just some of the reasons why it might not be as competitive as what you think. I'd like you to try to, push past that feeling and just go forward and apply. Okay. So here's a review of what we talked about. Scholarships start early. So, and they're open and closing throughout the entire grade 12 year. You need to make time to find and apply for scholarships. Don't wait for free time. It's not going to happen. Many scholarship essays have themes, and if you know what those themes are, then you can, write that content and reuse it over and over again. In the essay, get personal, talk about what you learned from your experiences and then how that might come in the future. And then once you win one, it's often easier to win more. And I added a sixth one. You might apply to win.
Okay.
So there's my battle cry to all of you. Go forth and apply.
Wow. Janet, that was fantastic. If I was going to add a seventh one for takeaway, it's the fact that there's a company that makes covers for hot tubs that's willing to give money out there. So there's scholarships to be won. I love the idea of, scholarships, Beget scholarships. It's that kind of forward momentum. My biggest takeaway, something I wish I had this webinar when I was in high school, is treat it like a job or treat it like a part-time job. Put in the work, schedule the time. And I love the idea of repurposing content. I do want to stress, and Janet did before as well, it can't be cookie cutter, cut and paste. You can't use the same application for every scholarship. You do have to be intentional and read very closely so you don't get disqualified what they're looking for, but not just so you don't get disqualified, so that you can tailor it to that application, but being smart, work smarter, not harder. And there is some stuff you will be able to repurpose. So
right. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is it's your content and it's the smart thing to do.
Yep.
So do it if you can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So this is, sorry, Damien.
I was going to say, you ready to tackle some Q&A, or do you have a few other, or we want to, actually, yeah, this is a great time. Let's talk a bit more. So obviously, Janet, you're going to give away a few copies of your guide, but there's a lot of other stuff on your website that is available to students to check out. So tell students why they should go check out mycampusGPS.ca.
Okay. Sure. So first thing is that I have services for grade 11s, one-to-one coaching, so to prepare for admissions and scholarships. And then in grade 12s, I have my guidebook and I have my one-to-one coaching and the small group scholarship essay writing workshops. So I have one coming up in mid-November. These are small groups. Okay. So, and the other thing is that it is a workshop. It's not just me blathering on for like 2 hours. Students will actually write a practice essay in the workshop. So I will teach, they apply the information, and they will be based on those common themes. Okay, so they'll choose one of those themes and use it as an essay to work on in the workshop. I have lots of great free resources. So here, this for students, in grade 11, this is a guide that helps students to understand why grade 11 is important and the things that they can do to prepare for grade 12 for admissions and scholarships. Now, for the counselors, what some counselors have done is actually asked me if they could put this into their Google Classroom for students. And I am very happy for you to do that, just so long as, it's attributed and everything. Then it's a great way to help grade 11 students to understand the importance of that year. For grade 12 students, I have a grade 12 checklist. So this is basically what you should be doing for the first few months of grade 12 to make sure that you're making the most of the opportunities that come up. And then I actually have a resource that I made specifically for counselors. So this is something that you can put in your Google Classroom if you want, and it's a guide that helps students to understand what they need to do to get their best reference letter possible. And it actually also, it has an email script in there for students that they can follow to request that reference, and so that they know what should they be doing, when they should be doing it, what should I include in that request to get the best reference possible. And then I also have a blog where I have about 60 articles, free information, and my blog was one of the top education blogs in Canada. So lots of great free resources on there too. So that's me. I know that a lot of counselors are on Twitter. And if you'd like to follow me on Twitter, then I post a lot of really great content. I also post scholarship opportunities that you can then retweet. So So I hope that you'll look me up there. Okay, questions?
Yeah, let's tackle a few of them. And guys, that was Janet, we can't thank you enough for that. There was so much amazing information from this webinar, but all the amazing stuff that's on your site as well. So I hope that everyone watching this and checking out the recording will take advantage of those resources. Let's ask a couple questions. Actually, and you know what? I want to do one thing before we jump into the questions, just a quick plug for my blueprint. Obviously, students, if you're using my blueprint, you know that my blueprint puts forward a few scholarships as well every year, $1,000 a pop. So make sure you get in there and apply for those. One of your pieces you talked about that, as a common question was around volunteering. We're going to hear stuff from students say, well, it's harder to volunteer now because of COVID. Yeah, everything's harder now. That's the world. We're all living in it. But we do have a webinar, our next value add webinar with my blueprint coming up in December with the Youth Philanthropy Initiative, talking about COVID-friendly ways to support youth volunteering.
That's great. I'd like to hear that myself.
All right. Well, we got one registered so far then. So educators, make sure to sign up for that one. You'll hear more about it when we send out the recording for this one. One question I got before we jump into the Q&A, a few more than a few students asked this question. I guess more about the logistics, and maybe it's different with each scholarship. How do you actually get the money? I can speak to it with my blueprint. When we award our scholarships, we actually ask for proof of enrollment when you get to the post-secondary, and we kind of direct pay it. So it comes right off your tuition. But I've heard of some students actually getting physical cash, right? So how does that piece work?
Most are what you just said. So the organization will deposit the funds directly into your student account at the institution that you've registered. And it will come off usually off your tuition. And then if it's more than your tuition, then it might come off something like residence or something like that. Okay.
Cool.
It does happen that the organization might cut you a check for it. Less common.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Usually it goes right in. Now, what I will say too is that a benefit, so obviously if you get the scholarship from the university, it's only tenable at that particular institution, right? But the ones that are external to the university, so all those other ones, many of those, almost all of them in fact, can be applied at any post-secondary institution. So that's a benefit actually of those external ones versus the university ones. So you might get one from the university, but the ones from the externals can usually be applied at most, accredited post-secondary institution.
Yep, it's a great point. And I think with that, you actually kind of answered one of the first Q&A questions. How many scholarships? There's no limit, right? You can receive maybe at the post-secondary institution itself, you can only get so many, but there's a lot of external scholarships out there. So no harm in applying to as many as you shoot your shot for.
Now, it might happen that if you have a lot and, like some scholarships will not maybe award you the full amount if you're in receipt of other scholarships because they want to basically distribute the funds to other people so that not everybody, but some are like that, some are not. You just have to read the terms of the scholarship, and too many scholarships, that's a good problem to have, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
So just keep going. And I do suggest that people apply for at least 10 scholarships during their grade 12 year.
Minimum. Okay, scholarships in grade 11. I know with my blueprint scholarships we give away, you can be a grade 11 or 12 student. Again, we're paying the post-secondary directly, so you're gonna have to wait till you go to post-secondary. But yes, there are scholarships you can win in grade 11.
There are fewer than grade 12, but there are a few. Yep.
We had a question, best way to learn more about Janet. I'd say just visit her website, mycampusGPS.ca, follow her on Twitter, lots of good stuff. Can you get OSAP along with scholarships? Person wants to know basically if you can get both.
To tell you the truth, I don't know anything about how it works, and I'm really cautious to say how that would work. I would think yes, but and in fact, some of the scholarships for demonstrated financial need, you would have to probably, qualify, let's say, for OSAP to, for that, but they're all different. I don't want to say make a blanket statement.
No, that's fair. I mean, I can speak to my personal history. I received OSAP and some scholarships. So I'm sure the government would be happy for you to win scholarships so they can give you a little bit less money. We got what kind of things get people disqualified? I think you talked about that. Just read it, right? They may have asked for 3 references and you only gave 2 kind of thing, right? So just be specific and intentional about what you're applying for. What else do we have in here? Okay, if you receive more money than your tuition cost for that year, would it be banked in your university account for future years?
Yeah, so it'll depend on the funder, but they might then move to like your residence cost for that year or something like that. So they all work differently.
Okay. How do I know if entrance scholarships for marks are guaranteed and renewable? Does that make sense to you?
Well, I don't know if I understand it exactly, but let's talk about renewable awards. So
Sure.
renewable meaning, you get part of your money in first year, and then like it's basically divided $20,000, like 5,000 over 4 years. So with renewable scholarships for universities anyway, they're all different, but they usually have some kind of grade requirement, a GPA that you must meet in order to get your money in subsequent years. Okay, so you need to read the terms of that scholarship agreement very carefully to know what terms do I have to meet in order to get my money in subsequent years. Okay, again, a benefit of those external ones is that they often don't have that type of requirement on them. You just get it a lot of times if you pass. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's another benefit of the external ones.
Okay, I have one from Diana. We want to continue to build our repertoire of scholarship resources for our students that are representative of our student body, in particular, culturally diverse resources that promote equity and inclusion. Any info would be greatly appreciated. I mean, anything come to mind, Janet, that you know about for something like that?
A lot of scholarships that are coming up with kind of that EDI, window on them.
Right.
And so there is that at the beginning, I showed the search engines, like there's the Inspire for Indigenous students. And a lot of the universities themselves are having scholarships for students under the equity and diversity and inclusion window. So that's not very specific, but yeah, so there are more of those that are being developed, I find, each year.
Yeah, just about being intentional and using the right words when you're searching for them. Right?
Yeah, the other thing is that some of the larger scholarships, like the Loran, for example, they're really looking for students, like they really see the difference of like the well-resourced student versus the student who might live in a smaller community, not be well-resourced and that sort of thing. But it's about their potential for leadership, and they're really recognizing, kind of like the difference in opportunities. And so I would encourage counselors to encourage students to apply for the larger awards as well, basically, like just apply for those ones too.
What is the Loran? Like, is it a private family fund or?
Foundation.
The foundation, yeah. Okay. That's the one I hadn't known about before, so it's amazing. All right, and let's finish it off with one more plug for you, Janet. We had, where can I access your scholarship essay writing workshop?
On my website. Yeah. It's on there under my mycampusGPS.ca. The other thing that I wanted to offer to the counselors, working with them over the years, through my, when I was assistant registrar, I worked with a lot of counselors and everything, is that if you have a Google Classroom and you want some help with like what kind of resources to put in there about scholarships, like what are some of the good ones and like the good links and that sort of stuff, feel free to contact me and, I can help you set those up or give you some ideas or resources.
You're gonna have a lot of new Twitter followers over the next couple of days when we send out the recording. And we had one little comment from Sam in the chat. Thank you for that, Sam. I think this was in relation to our question about can you get OSAP and scholarships. And Sam said, typically you can receive provincial student aid as well as scholarships as long as you declare confirmed scholarships on the application form. So thank you for that, Sam. And thank you for this, Janet. This was a wealth of knowledge. Really appreciate your time. mycampusGPS.ca, mycampusGPS on Twitter. You guys know how to get in touch with Janet. Good luck. Make time, schedule it in your calendar. Don't listen to those negative thoughts and enjoy the experience because you're only going to be in grade 12 once.